It is about keeping our Secretary of State accountable to the residents of Michigan for her job.
Last week in Michigan politics, articles of impeachment brought against the state's top election official, what they allege, and how she's responding. Plus, the state steps in after multiple tornadoes swept across West Michigan last month, how it's aiming to help with the recovery. And is Kent County a sanctuary county? What the county sheriff says pushed her to set the record straight. I'm Josh Alburtus, and this is your 13 on Your Side Rundown. We start this week at the state capitol after weeks of tension between Michigan Republicans and Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson. One state lawmaker is now attempting to impeach her. The announcement of articles of impeachment caps off weeks in which we've seen a contempt vote against her and a conclusion from the state AG's department that she violated election law. But interestingly, these articles seem to deal with other alleged offenses altogether.
Articles of impeachment.
A striking announcement from this Republican state lawmaker Monday as he alleged corruption and even potential crimes on the part of the state's top elections official, Jocelyn Benson.
As a legislator and lifelong resident of the state of Michigan, it is my belief that we are dealing with the most lawless Secretary of State in Michigan history.
After weeks of contention between House Republicans and the Democratic Secretary of State, State Representative Jim DeSena introducing 3 articles of impeachment against her. Almost 2 weeks after the House voted to hold her in contempt for allegedly defying a subpoena for election training materials, DeSena going back further, alleging she repeatedly exceeded her authority, allegedly failed to fulfill her role in responding to election concerns, and that she allegedly threatened local election officials.
It is about keeping our Secretary of State accountable to the residents of Michigan for her job.
But Benson responding, saying that what she believes to be a, quote, clown show under House Speaker Matt Hall is, quote, no way to govern. She continued, quote, it is not how we solve problems, it is not how we make government work for everyone, and every taxpayer dollar wasted on these shenanigans is a waste of time and money.
In a long roundabout way, I think that whether it's viewed as political or not, my people sent me here to uphold the law, to make good law, and to have fair elections. And I believe that we're not anywhere near that right now.
But some taking note of the context, given Benson's place as a frontrunner in the race for governor in 2026.
Whether it will reflect her run for governor, it's independent of that. We've been dealing with this for almost 4 years now, and this is a long time coming, in my opinion.
But her campaign laying the motivation at the feet of what they see as her early success, saying in part, quote, they're falling all over themselves to find ways to continue attacking the frontrunner for governor by pursuing a senseless impeachment inquiry. And just 2 days after the impeachment articles were introduced, Republican Representative Rochelle Smith announced the House of Representatives was filing a lawsuit against Benson. The lawsuit alleges that Benson illegally defied a subpoena from the House Oversight Committee requesting election training materials issued about 6 weeks ago. Smith said in a statement, quote, Secretary Benson has proven she is unwilling to comply with our subpoena and Michigan law. She skirted the rules and done whatever she could to avoid public scrutiny. It's becoming overwhelmingly clear that she will never release the training materials we're looking for without direction from a court. Benson had previously pushed back against the claim after she was held in civil contempt by the chamber last month. Following the vote to hold her in contempt, Benson had said, quote, we have turned over more than 300... Dang it. Can I just keep going? I'll just keep going. Quote, we have turned over more than 3,300 pages of election documents to this committee and to the public on our department's website, michigan.gov/election transparency. Anyone can go and see the thousands of documents that we have provided. Also at the Capitol this week, the debate over gun control. On the eve of National Gun Violence Awareness Day, several major topics of the national debate coming once again to Michigan, as lawmakers considered a number of bills that could mean big changes if passed.
That half-a-second decision changed our whole entire family's life.
This isn't the first time Denise Week has shared her story with Lansing lawmakers.
I know a lot of you have already heard my testimony before and my story.
In hopes of making change.
I don't think any family should have to go through what we've been through or worse.
In fact, she's been before this same committee before, recounting as she says her son was shot in 2021 by a ghost gun purchased and assembled from a kit.
He's now a chronic epileptic. He has major PTSD, understandably. And right now, he's just fighting every single day to get through it and to not have to see another specialist, because there's so many of them that we see.
And Thursday, Week joined other advocates as Senate lawmakers considered a number of bills on top issues in the national gun debate.
Today, the rest of my senior class is on a trip to Cedar Point. And I skipped it because I still haven't lost faith in our government.
5 bills total aimed at 3 major topics. 1, banning the owning and selling of bump stocks, which allow semi-automatic weapons to fire similarly to a fully automatic. 2, cracking down on so-called ghost guns that don't have valid serial numbers to track them. And 3, barring guns from the Capitol building and 2 major legislative office buildings, unless the person that has it is a state lawmaker or otherwise authorized.
On April 30th of 2020, I witnessed firsthand how terrifying it can be to try to vote and do my job when men in full tactical gear and openly carrying long guns loomed above us in the balcony.
But some feel parts or all of the legislation don't address the problems they seek to solve.
Until we address the lack of firearm education, we correct the judicial system in prosecuting those that break the laws that are already on the books, and address our mental health crisis, we're not going to begin to find the solutions we're really seeking.
All 5 bills were passed out of committee, now on their way to the full House. A tense hearing in the state capitol last week as the state superintendent and state board of education president testified before the House Oversight Committee on the state of public education in Michigan. Reading scores, one of the topics where the hearing got heated. Both positives and negatives were highlighted by the 2 top education officials, as well as several requests made in order to continue to improve the educational performance of Michigan children. State Board of Education President Pamela Pugh conceded students and teachers in Michigan deal with crowded classrooms, a lack of adequately paid teachers, and limited access to special education services. State Superintendent Michael Rice pointed out a positive note, seemingly. The 4-year graduation rate, he said, in Michigan is the highest in state history at more than 82%. NAEP, or the National Assessment of Educational Progress results, were talked about in the hearing. Per the 2024 NAEP results, 75% of Michigan 4th graders are below proficient in reading. Rice did seek to clarify that NAEP results represent a small fraction of students in the state. In turn, more funding was requested. The hearing at times was heated.
NAEP back in 2005 said we were 33% were proficient. In 2007, it went up to 34%. It's been a steady decline since and rapidly falling since 2019. Do you see a problem with that?
We cannot have this conversation about reading levels or the quality of education without having the conversation about our funding. We've seen historic budgets, but it has not kept pace, has not dug us out of where we were.
The hearing ended with discussion over the need to pass the school aid budget by a July 1st deadline. The future of Medicaid for thousands of people in Michigan. The state health department says 750,000 Michiganders could lose their benefits under what's been dubbed the One Big Beautiful Bill in Congress. At the state capitol this week, advocates spoke to state leaders about what could happen, they say, if the bill, already approved by the U.S. House, is passed by the Senate and signed by President Donald Trump. 13 on your side's Lauren Baker was at the hearing in Lansing and heard the story of 2 Grand Rapids area mothers who say Medicaid must stay.
Before today, Melissa Flossberg and Courtney Gilmore didn't know each other. But after hearing each other's stories, they say they found a connection in their fight to keep Medicaid, not only for themselves, but for families across Michigan. Miles away from the U.S. Capitol.
My son Jace was born with a rare life-threatening condition called hypoplastic left heart syndrome, otherwise known as half a heart.
Two Grand Rapids moms spoke at their state capitol.
It was too late to do an emergency C-section, so he ended up with brain damage due to a loss of oxygen.
Fighting against cuts on Medicaid.
It allows us to be a mom and not just, when he was little, it felt like I was his physical therapist, his speech therapist, his feeding therapist, and when did I get to be his mom and not just a nurse and an advocate.
Melissa Flossberg and Courtney Gilmore didn't know each other until Wednesday.
Even though we didn't meet till today, we already do kind of know each other.
Until the two heard each other's stories during the Michigan Senate Health Policy Committee hearing, a moment they say can be comforting.
Even though you don't know each other, it's kind of nice to be able to relate to someone, especially coming here by yourself.
They were joined by other agencies and advocates voicing concerns about federal cuts trickling down to the state level.
Medicaid not only improves health outcomes, but actually increases educational attainment and future wages.
Some lawmakers agreeing with what was being said.
You're cutting the funding coming to the state for Medicaid. You're increasing the cost for us to administer the program. And the ultimate end of that is that less people will have coverage.
Megan Groen, Chief Deputy Director of MDHHS, says 1 in 4 families are covered by Medicaid, many of those families living in rural areas that heavily rely on Medicaid, which is why these moms say their fight to keep Medicaid isn't just about their boys.
I'm proud that I get to do something.
It's about making sure every family that relies on Medicaid can help keep their loved ones safe and healthy.
If I can help, just be a little bit of help towards saving health care for children that rely on it to live, that is worth it to me. No matter how nervous you are, it's worth it.
And news has moved fast on Congress's One Big Beautiful Bill. That legislation now passed by the U.S. House aimed at addressing federal spending and tax rates. But while the White House and many congressional Republicans have heralded the legislation, the state of Michigan now releasing updated numbers this week on the impacts it could have in our state. In a memo released this week by Governor Gretchen Whitmer's office, the state budget office estimated changes to the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, could cost the state nearly $900 million a year. As this major food assistance program is currently designed, the SBO said, the federal government covers all program benefits. But what's been proposed for a new state share of the cost, the office says, could total up to $800 million for the state annually. Another $90 million a year, they estimated, would come in the form of administrative costs shifted to the state. About 15% of Michiganders, the SBO said, were receiving SNAP benefits as of last year, nearly 1.5 million people. The SBO believes the extra costs would make it unlikely the state would be able to fill them without, quote, severely impacting other programs, including education, public safety, and Medicaid. It's what some are calling a state of emergency following recent legal and political developments impacting families and youth assistance in the area. Coming up, what drove community members to this town hall in Grand Rapids and why they're saying change is needed. In Grand Rapids, a Kent County Commissioner hosted what was called a state of emergency town hall on Monday. It was in response to several high-profile legal decisions involving police that some say did not deliver justice. Raw emotion from families that have become involved in what many feel is this state of emergency, but also people coming together to support them and potentially make a change. The question a lot of people seemed to be asking, though, is how.
This is what community looks like. This is what we need.
A vulnerable but united community amidst what some are calling a state of emergency.
It could be your child on the highway driving. Your child coming to Grand Rapids to hang out and enjoy themselves on a Friday or Saturday night, and they think you're a native of Grand Rapids, and they shoot your child in the back of the head, or they run over your child.
People gathering for a town hall at the local Wealthy Theater in Grand Rapids following recent legal and political developments.
The best thing that we as a community can do is accountability or nothing. If I'm asking you a question, I deserve an answer. Period, point blank. Period. Accountability or nothing.
Panelists and community members reacting to multiple happenings, including both the mistrial in the case of former Grand Rapids police officer Christopher Schur, who had been accused of murder in the death of Patrick Loyola after shooting him in the back of the head during a traffic stop, and the dismissal of the charges against Michigan State Police Detective Sergeant Brian Keeley surrounding the death of Samuel Sterling, whom Keeley had pinned between his vehicle and the side of a building. Many also invoking the name of Riley Doggett, who died after being hit by a sheriff's vehicle during a chase. Family of those involved in the cases lined the panel.
I watched my son, and I had to pull that blanket back to see my baby. There's no justice to this. And I'm gonna fight for my baby, and I'm gonna fight for y'all's.
Another topic, Job Corps, which provided things like high school graduation assistance and help with finding work through centers like this one in Grand Rapids. The U.S. Department of Labor announced last week it would begin a phased pause of many Job Corps centers in order to align with President Donald Trump's proposal for the federal budget.
There's still time and there's still money in that budget for us to continue now if you're going to change it. But instead, they decided that 25,000 youth are not important enough to find a way to make sure that they have a safe place to stay, to learn, and to grow.
Community members also expressing how they think they move forward.
Like these town meetings are going to help, but we all got to get together and do something to help it change.
Well, this was one of 4 such town hall meetings that we're told will be held. Another thing they discussed at that meeting was what was expected to be the closing of the Gerald R. Ford Job Corps Center in Grand Rapids. The U.S. Department of Labor announced late last month it would look to pause operations at all contractor-operated Job Corps centers by June 30th. The Job Corps program is aimed at helping people between the ages of 16 and 24 with things like employment and finding ways to finish high school. The pause was expected to affect 25,000 students roughly nationwide. U.S. Representative Hillary Skolton was among several local lawmakers who were calling on the Labor Department to reverse its stance.
We are eager to work with the Department of Labor to figure out how we can make this program more effective, but ending it so abruptly with almost zero information about how they're planning to roll it down. You know, the Department of Labor had said, we're going to make sure that these students, you know, are transitioned and, you know, there's not going to be a felt impact, but there's no indication of how they're going to do that.
The Department of Labor had said they would work with local partners to assist current students to advance their training and connect them with employment and educational opportunities. But as of late this week, cuts were halted. A judge temporarily stopped the Trump administration from moving forward with efforts to downsize the Job Corps. A district judge in Manhattan issued a temporary restraining order in a lawsuit filed by a trade group that represents contractors that operate Job Corps centers. But as that was a temporary order, the future for those centers remains uncertain. Before that decision from the court came down, we talked to one man who said he was heartbroken about the news targeting the Job Corps. George Rongus went to the Gerald R. Ford Job Corps Center for security officer certification. He later received office administration certification at a different center, and he's now a public safety officer at an Indiana hospital. He said Job Corps changed his life, and he couldn't imagine what current students were going through.
Hearing from certain staff that I spoke with and these students, like, they're losing everything. They're losing their education. They're losing the chance to better themselves in life, and it's truly devastating. And I will continue to keep these young adults and staff members in prayer and just hope that one day they can reopen Job Corps.
Again, that was before the court's decision, but Rongus was urging President Donald Trump and other leaders to find a way to fund Job Corps. Kent County is not a sanctuary county. That's according to County Sheriff Michelle LaJoy Young. Young made that announcement after she says the U.S. Department of Homeland Security recently included Kent County on a list of sanctuary jurisdictions. She says it is not clear why Kent County was added to the list. Young said her office has consistently worked with U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. The department, she said, later removed the list from its website. Police in the city of Wyoming getting a number of new upgrades, including body cameras, after a Wyoming City Council meeting last week. The council approved a $6 million agreement with Axon, a technology company for law enforcement, and the contract will give officers a number of technology upgrades. That includes 9 new body cameras, 5 new in-car cameras, 23 new tasers, virtual reality training, and an AI program. The department already has body cameras and in-car cameras in use, but the virtual reality training will be new. In a proposal to the City Council, Wyoming police leaders say it's meant to focus on empathy, putting officers in first-person scenarios. That means the officer may see things from the perspective of a person experiencing something like a mental health crisis or high-stress situation. AI will also be new for the department. Axon calls it the AI Era Plan. It's meant to cut down on administrative work like report writing and transcribing interviews. The Wyoming police chief says agencies already using the technology say a 50% decrease in the time it takes to write a report. That means officers have more time in the community. Because the city approved the contract with Axon before June 30th, they are considered an early adopter of the AI Era Plan and received a discounted rate. And the virtual reality training is free, saving the department, we're told, over $2 million in savings. After those severe storms rolled through the state in mid-May, almost a dozen tornadoes are now confirmed to have wreaked havoc. But for 3 of the most heavily impacted areas, the state government is signing off on further assistance. What the state is doing to help and who's getting it, that's next. Continuing coverage now on the project in Michigan looking to revive a nuclear plant for the first time in U.S. history. This week, leaders from Holtec sharing 2 big updates. The first big milestone for the restart of the Palisades plant, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission has issued their final environmental assessment. They found the project poses no significant environmental risk. In the other development, the plant got full accreditation on its maintenance and technical training program. That accreditation was the last one of many required to show Holtec can operate the plant properly. Leaders say the progress keeps them on track to restart in October. Consumers Energy wants to hike their electric rates, and now State Attorney General Dana Nessel is filing an intervention against the utility company. The AG's office says this latest annual electric rate hike of $436 million is the largest rate hike Consumers has requested during Nessel's time in office. It would mean household rates, according to Nessel's office, would go up by more than 13%. In the filing, Consumers Energy justified their request by pointing to various needs the utility company has, including increasing grid reliability, mitigating risks, enhancing safety, and investing in technology and equipment. Nessel responded by saying, quote, "My office will thoroughly scrutinize this request and will not be deterred in our fight to protect Michigan ratepayers from corporate greed and endless increasing rate hikes." If this hike is approved, it would go into effect of May of next year. It's been nearly a month since 11 tornadoes touched down in Michigan, including 2 in Allegan County. Now Governor Gretchen Whitmer is declaring a state of emergency in Allegan County, as well as Baraga County and Lansing. The declaration makes state resources available to support local recovery efforts. Allegan County officials requested assistance after determining that the damage was too much for them to cover on their own. The county has been under an emergency declaration since May 28th. People in the Muskegon area are being asked to join the Michigan Chemical Exposure Monitoring Program, or MICHEM. It's an ongoing effort by state health officials who are gathering data on the amount of chemicals like lead and PFAS in the blood and urine of Michiganders. One adult will be randomly selected from each registered household to participate by taking a survey and providing samples, which will then be analyzed at the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services Bureau of Laboratories. They're hoping to discover trends on how people come into contact with chemicals. Participants will get a $75 gift card. And that's the rundown for your week in Michigan politics. Be sure to keep up with all the top political stories of the day, both on air and online at 13onyourside.com. I will be on leave, but the rundown will see you next week.